Dateline San Salvador, Wednesday, 16 April. Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, whom you had probably never heard of 7 days ago, managed to make himself into the most widely mocked man in the whole country by the end of the work week, which, irrespective of whose side you're on, I think we can all agree that that's quite an auspicious achievement indeed. With this weird sort of quasi-religious pilgrimage that he made down to San Salvador to check on the welfare of the constituent whose well-being matters most of all to him, that being the illegal alien MS-13 gangbanger and human trafficker, allegedly, and wife-beater, allegedly, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who's really become quite the cause celeb in the media Democrat complex. I mean, hell, this is the second straight week he's been in the Roundup. That's how important this motherfucker is. But ladies and gentlemen, as intrepid journalists and ruggedly handsome slabs of USDA select man meat, we have a certain solemn duty here on this program, one of which is correcting misconceptions. So, let's talk about certain misconceptions about our friend Kilmar. Can I call you Kilmar? Or would you prefer inmate number 2345556? Either way, makes no difference to me. So you may have heard, you've almost certainly heard, that Kilmar was deported to El Salvador by mistake, even though he is a Salvadoran national, which seems weird. And if you're on the media Democrat complex side of things, you're arguing that this administrative error should render the whole process moot and invalid, and homeboy should be able to come back home to Maryland and smack his old lady around a little bit more. So how can it be an administrative error when you deport a scumbag back to the very self-same country the scumbag is from? Well, because Kilmar, a few years ago, he managed to convince some idiot Biden immigration judge that he can't be sent back to El Salvador because, you see, as a member of MS-13, he fears being targeted by their rival gang. But wait, I hear you say, isn't everybody in the media Democrat complex falling all over themselves saying there is no evidence this guy is an MS-13 member? Well, yes. Yes, they are. It's almost like one aspect of their argument directly negates and defeats another aspect of their argument and thus renders the whole thing invalid. And they don't want to talk about it very much, which you can't really blame them for. So let's talk about it, shall we? And let's pay particular attention to the photos of the meeting between Kilmar and his good friend Senator Van Hollen, because yes, he had to go to the prison and make a goddamn annoying nuisance of himself for about 2.5 days, but finally, at long last, he did manage to secure a meeting with Kilmar. Now, what's the first thing that jumps out at the viewer about these pictures? Well, Kilmar is wearing a Kansas City Chiefs hat, which seems like a weird thing for a Maryland senator to bring along for this guy to wear. It seems like a Maryland senator would bring a Ravens hat, unless he was afraid of his constituents freaking out about their team's hat being on that dude's head. Or, the other possibility is, he wanted to subtly sort of throw shade at one of the Ravens' most hated rivals, in which case, you have to say, that's a pretty good troll. Now, the second thing that jumps out at you about these photographs is the array of beverages that are sitting on the table. And this became a matter of some controversy yesterday since President Bukele of El Salvador accused the senator of sipping margaritas with the MS-13 dude. So I'm going to tell you exactly what happened here. And it's actually pretty funny. So Van Hollen's people, when they were staging the scene, they told Kilmar, you gotta keep your hands out of sight, keep them under the table so nobody can see your MS-13 knuckle tats. So what does Bukele do? He keeps sending his people in with an enticing array of yummy beverages in the hope they can get the guy to break and take a sip. Meanwhile, as much fun as it is to laugh at all of that, let's also bear in mind there is no record of Chris Van Hollen ever placing a call or sending a note of condolence to any of his actual constituents who have lost loved ones or been otherwise suffered from the depredations of Joe Biden's illegal aliens. And he should be ashamed of himself for that. If he thought this stunt this week was going to be some sort of springboard to the presidency, well, he's a fucking idiot.